Chris has entered the studio. Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. Today I'm joined by Sean Connolly. I will also be joined by Chris McElwain as well. And we're here, of course, because Celtic are at Rugby Park to play Kilmarnock. How are you feeling before we get stuck into the starting 11, Sean? What is your feeling? What is your emotion this afternoon?
I'm not feeling confident before any game for a long time now. So once again today, I'm feeling that trepidation about a Celtic game. Half of the stories about Celtic these days are not football on the pitch related. So it's, a lot of distractions in between games. And I hope that's not filtering through to the players. But I'm also worried about the pitch and expecting this to kind of kill the quality of the game a bit. I remember the last trip to Rugby Park we had this season was the one where we won with the last minute penalty, where it was should not have been a penalty in my opinion, but we won it. That was it Ian Atchell scored the winner?
It was,
and he's not even in the squad today. So there's a lot going on and a lot to talk about, and I'm concerned, but I do think we will edge it today. I do actually think we'll win. I think teams like Kilmarnock are not used to doing the 3 games in a week thing. They don't have the same depth that we do. I think that will work in our favour.
I think you're right. I do think you're right, because I also have been going on about the mentality side of it. Martin O'Neill having gone through this time and time again. Other people, Chris, like Derek McInnes, showing signs of megalomania. I mean, whenever he's getting interviewed now, he's going on about, it's this siege mentality, and he is actually losing the plot on the sideline week to week, and that's fine. Let him do that, because I know that Martin O'Neill's been through this before. He's been through this course. He knows exactly how to deal with the press. He knows how to deal with his team. I think we'll come back on the Ian Atchell point, because that's becoming something of a concern for me. But we'll concentrate on the team. How are you feeling going into this game? Just before you came in live there, Chris, Sean and I were talking about how, we're at our wit's end. The anxiety is high. The 97th minute winners are exciting, but it would be nice if we had the game done and dusted before the 90th at least.
Yeah, it seems a little while since we've had that feeling, where we've just absolutely dominated the game, and the scoreboard reflects that. We seem to be having a lot of performances just now where we are dominant in large parts, but we're just not putting the ball in the back of the net ultimately. Until as you say, sometimes the post the 90 minutes, which is, I'm sure, very, very exciting for the neutrals. But as a Celtic fan, it's not so good for your health to have to continue going through that. So it would be nice to get back to the occasional, statement win, as they call it. With that said, I've got similar, I wouldn't say anxiety, but certainly apprehension about the match today. And I usually do when we come up against Kilmarnock, particularly at their grounds. You've got the factor of the pitch, which always seems to have an effect. I appreciate both teams are having to play on it, but not many people have positive remarks to say about the Kilmarnock pitch, and I think that's well established now. It's also been something of a bogey team over the last few years for us, under different managers, including the one you just mentioned, the chap who I think has already won the Premiership, given the way he's been talking. But I think at the same time, when on paper, when you look not only at our manager, but you look at the squad that we have, you look at some of the established players that are still there, you would expect to go into these games with a degree of confidence. I think the big factor that you've mentioned is the Martin O'Neill effect. I think he embodies that element of being able to win at all costs. I think we're seeing elements of that within the team. We may not be, banging in 5, 6, 7 goals as you would want, but we're winning, and we're playing parts of our game very well for me, and we look a lot more resilient than maybe we have done in the past year. So I think there's a lot of positives to take from what Martin's done since he came in. But at the same time, we're at the stage of the season. It's we're in a title fight. I think all 3 teams that are in the title race at the moment are vulnerable at different parts, but they're all capable of pulling out a win. And I would just like to see us continue to make ground. It's a good opportunity today. We don't know what's going to happen in the later game between Rangers and Hearts. I'm not sure whether we would favour one team winning over the other or a draw, but ultimately I just want us to do the business here today.
Favour's the wrong word. I wouldn't favour any of the teams. What I would like to happen, Chris, is whatever's best for Celtic. And that's another thing that Sean and I were talking about beforehand. You'll not catch me on here saying, I hope Rangers win or I hope Hearts win. However,
a weird feeling in your ear.
Yes, it would. I'd need to go for a hot shower after that. However, whatever is the best result for Celtic, I want that to happen this afternoon. Right, and that's as simple as that. We're at the business end of the season, and it's all about what's best for Celtic in so many different aspects, by the way, not just today, but also in relation to the fans getting back in to the stadium as well. We will be bringing up both teams, but I'm going to start off by bringing in some of these comments. First of all, in the heat, you're up on the YouTube, and can I just say thanks, everybody? We've got a lot of new YouTube subscribers. We've been hitting 1,000 new subscribers consistently for about the last 3 or 4 months. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you to the old school, and the both of you will be coming up on the comments section today. What I will say is we're 97 subscribers short, ladies and gentlemen, from hitting the 40,000 mark on YouTube. So if you're watching this and you don't subscribe, hit the subscriber button. It doesn't cost you a penny. Lots happening in the world of Acsom. And let's just see over the 3 streams, pre-match, halftime and full-time, whether we can get over the 40k. And in the heat says Rio is a mistake, right? So before we can discuss that, let's bring up the team. And we'll ask the panel whether or not they agree that Rio is a mistake. There's your starting 11 right there. And Junior Adamu is the poster boy today. He makes his first start for Celtic. We know he can play centre forward. He can also play right and left wing. Very adaptable player and a very useful acquisition, scoring with his first touch of the ball, but just so happened to be a back heel. He gets his first start today, and obviously he will be partnered up top with Yang and Maeda. I think it's all about rotation up the top today. But the question was around Hatate. So let's start off with the midfield and Sean. McGregor, Hatate, and Nygren. We know that Engels is injured, of course. Oxley, Chamberlain, and McEwen were options. They're on the bench. And Martin O'Neill has gone for Rio Hatate. Do you agree with that? Do you think that was a bad move?
I mean, like, would you? I don't think you're going to start Oxley Chamberlain in a game yet, because then he'll end up going the same way as Engels, sitting on the sideline injured. So I guess at that point your choices are Hatate, McEwen, or Bernardo. And Bernardo, another player like Iheanacho, missing from the squad, so he's completely bombed out. So I guess that makes him 7th choice at the moment, behind a free agent who just came in the door last week. So yeah, look, Hatate's obviously had an attitude problem the last month or so. I think maybe he's given up on his hopes of going to the World Cup, and he's maybe depressed about it. It's been more than a year since almost a year, since he was last in a Japan squad, and there's been about 10 Japan games since then. So I don't think he's feeling very optimistic about that, and he's probably kind of given up on it. But we're still paying his wages, and to be quite frank, he owes us one after stuff like the Bologna and the penalty that he gave away last week that almost cost us against Livingston. So, look, maybe somebody has had a word with him, because he's been. I noticed after he gave away that penalty last week, he did up his effort, which is not to say he was very effective, but it was the lowest of low blocks last week. It was lower than a snail's privates, as I said in the chat. If you go back and watch that, the Oxley Chamberlain goal, every single Livingston player is either in the box or in the D, like all of them, when it comes to Oxley Chamberlain, who's on the edge of the box. So there's technically, he's got a shot from 18 yards because the Livingston players are so deep that there's no one there to close him down on the edge of the box, because they're so deep in the box that they're far away from him.
Yeah.
So like, it was frustratingly low block. And anyway, I've meandered off the point here. But yeah, I think Hatate is, in terms of quality, the best option. In terms of form, he'd struggle to make the point. I think if Oxley Chamberlain was up to fitness, he'd be in there. The mystery of Bernardo eludes me. I really liked him at times. Even recently, he's shown, but like, whenever he gets his chance to start a game, it doesn't like really impact it enough. And Hatate has obviously been a liability, but he's also shown that he can win his games like Tawdry earlier in the season. So yeah, look, he needs to get his attitude right, but in terms of quality, it's the right choice. In terms of effectiveness, we'll find out, I guess.
Well, the thing is with Rio is he's a frustrating type of player, Chris. You know, he's a bit enigmatic in that respect. When I was watching him the other night, I did notice, and again, some players can't help this, but he seems to have that kind of lazy look about him at times.
Yeah.
Now, that's interesting because in terms of the high press, if you go back to the Bologna game prior to obviously sending off, he was the guy that was pressing the last defender. He was the guy that was pressing the goalkeeper time and time again, Rio Hatate. And then another night there, I seen him, he was kind of swaggering around the park. And I think that lends onlookers to then question things like Sean just has there. Because you think to yourself, where is that dynamic player that we've seen previously? Yeah. So it's all lining up right now, Chris, for Rio Hatate to open the scoring for 35 yards with a cracker, right? Because we've given him the kiss of death, so he's going to pay us back. The thing is, if he did that, it wouldn't surprise me because he's got it in his locker. We just haven't seen enough of it. And it's frustrating as hell for me because a player like Hatate and a manager like Martin O'Neill should be a match made in heaven, but we're not seeing it consistently enough, are we?
No, I agree with that. Before I respond to that point, somebody has offered to subscribe if I say that I look like Adam Clayton from U2. So if that gets us another subscriber, I'll say that I look like Adam Clayton from U2. So there you go. So that's one more subscriber.
Adam Clayton had undoubtedly the best hair. I think you're more like Larry Mullen. You're more like the drummer.
I don't want to set a precedent here because if people start saying, well, I'll subscribe if Chris says he looks like this, I could get into some really dangerous water here. So I'm going to say that's a one and done. Okay, so
at least I'm not comparing you to Bono. Anyway, on you go.
Could you imagine? But no, I think you're right on Hatate. I mean, the quality absolutely is there because he's demonstrated it, right? He has actually, he's produced moments of magic, shots from, outside the box, the classic worldies. He's actually, he's shown his tenacity in games, particularly in Europe at times. He's got that energy level and he's got the ability to do that high press as well, as you said, referencing a Bologna game. Where I think he lets himself down sometimes is where we need discipline in the midfield. I find sometimes that Hatate, while he's got this terrier-like energy, doesn't always channel it in the right way. And I found it in his last few appearances. And that he's actually cutting out the space for his fellow players, and he's making us play far, far too narrow because he's kind of one of these players that's just attracted to the ball, and he runs and follows the ball, and because of that, I don't think he necessarily helps us keep that balance and that shape in midfield. Now that's just based on me watching him in recent appearances. So I know that's not an every game occurrence, but I found that he's doing that more and more often, and I don't know if. Hatate is one of these players that suffered more than the others in terms of the various, changes in management and tactics. Brendan Rodgers spoke about it took him a while to get inside his head and find a way to make him more effective. He then has Martin O'Neill coming in, then Martin O'Neill goes out again, and Wilfred Nancy comes in, and now it's back to Martin O'Neill. Is he one of the players that's just really struggling to adapt to what the manager's requirements are? Is he maybe not got that adaptability? Compared to his fellow professionals. So I'm not 100% sure what the reasons are. But as both you and Sean have said, we've seen him perform really effectively in a Celtic team. And, he's got the opportunity to do it again today, but we're just not seeing it often enough. So would I say it's a mistake to play him today? I would always tend to trust the manager. But, and certainly trust the manager like Martin O'Neill. But I do think he's a player that's under scrutiny, and I think another bad performance today, it's going to be hard for the supporters, including us, to really get him back on side.
Yeah, it would be very difficult because obviously it's all hands to the pump, really, and we need a win today by hook or by crook. But as we said at the top of the show, it would be nice if it wasn't in the 97th minute. Yeah. We've got Katie coming on the YouTube. Not even Martin can coax a performance out of Hatate. Well, Katie, it's all set up nicely for Hatate to come out and make us all eat our words, and would be happy to do so. Polly comes in. Hope this is the day we can move up a gear. It's hard work and stressful, grinding out results. It is. I think there's also, over the last few weeks there, a tendency for all the focus and the narratives to be written in relation to the other challengers. Celtic are just plugging away, getting the 3 points on the board, doing their thing. And they're not being that spectacular, but the record is there for all to see. And Martin O'Neill's record has been tremendous this season. Post Mandes, hello, fellow Tims, watching from Thailand. And today's results will make or break the rest of my holiday. Come on. Well, I hope you enjoy it over there in Thailand. And hopefully you're joined by fellow Celtic supporters to enjoy not just Acsom, but the action as well. Sean Goodman says, any idea what's up with Kells, as they call him? No idea, Sean. And if I was ever in a press conference, if the ban was ever lifted for fan media, I would ask Martin O'Neill the question straight out. Obviously, we've got Svanchara on the bench today. Tuneki drops to the bench also. And in relation to that midfield, we've got the constant in McGregor, Sean, but the other man who's having a tremendous season, really contributing more than anybody else when it comes to goals and assists, Benjamin Nygren. Now, I've seen criticisms of him. It's like no one is spared a criticism here or there. What I have seen is, in grinding out the results over the last couple of weeks, is a work rate. I've seen a work rate from Benjamin Nygren. I think that he is definitely working on his game. You remember the footage after what we thought was Martin O'Neill's final game in charge against Dundee, the midweek game, and he points to Nygren, he points out Nygren, and how much he loves him and stuff. And you get the impression that he's doing a bit of man management on Ben Nygren. You sometimes forget he's only 24 as well, Sean. But he has, I'm not sure if he and Hatate can play in the same midfield, but he's made such an impact this season, hasn't he?
Yeah, look, he's certainly increased his intensity and output and work rate, even since Martin O'Neill's first spell this season. I think Hatate was preferred over Nygren when O'Neill was in November, December as his first run. So yeah, he's certainly heard something from somewhere, and he has upped his game in that sense. I think his defensive actions are still not as frequent, but he's certainly moving about a lot more. He's making runs late in games, which is not everyone is. I wonder if he's learning a bit from McGregor. But he's popping up with the goals, and that's like it's a hard thing to do. Like he would have had one last week against was it Livingston, the one where Douglas Ross flagged it? No, it was Dundee. Sorry, where Douglas Ross flagged it as out, and he scores. And anyway, but so he would be on 20 already. I think that is if that one had counted. Yeah, he's certainly contributing in the way that like Stefan Johansson and Chris Commons, all those famous left footers that Matt O'Reilly contributed from midfield. It's something about left footers scoring from midfield. There's not too many right footers do it, is there? Like not since I can't think of any since Andy Tom, really.
We still call it a cultured left foot, but never a cultured right foot.
That's right. Yeah, right foots have no culture.
No culture.
No. Luke McCowan, he's left foot as well. He can score from there. It's bizarre. I don't know. Like it's they only teach the left footers to do it. What did I said? Ox last week. But yeah, I don't. It's weird. It's so hard to. If this game was at home, I'd be thinking it was going to play out very differently from, like I'd be saying we're going to start coming at the traps, but being at Rugby Park, being on the surface, it feels like we're going to have a slow start. It feels like it's just going to be inevitable. I hope it doesn't come down to the last minute. We've won 16 league games this season, and 6 of those wins came with a winner 88 minutes or later. So that's 37.5% of games. That's 3/8 of games if you're good at maths.
So we might be in for an anxious afternoon again.
Well,
this is what they're telling us.
The main concern, my bigger concern, is that there's going to be a return to the mean. Like those 6 games, like half of those should have been draws, right? So I'm concerned that we're going to start drawing more games because we've only drawn 3 games so far. That's my main concern. I don't think like so many games are even. Like the ones that were winning as well, what was the one Falkirk where we won 1-0? That was a very even game as well. And there's not many dud teams in the league anymore. Livingston are dead bottom by a distance, and we struggled against them last week. So I think going to Rugby Park, it's going to be a challenge. I think every game is going to be a challenge for the rest of the season. I don't think we're going to have. We may get one comfortable win where some teams got suspensions and taking their eye off the ball or whatever, but. I think it'll be, unfortunately, a slog today.
There's a couple of things there, Sean. First one being, it's already been mentioned about how players might have to or may struggle to adapt from change to change with the different manager tenures that we've had. But then obviously with an influx of new players in January, I just think that this side, since Martin's come in the second time, haven't quite got into the groove yet. We're not in the rhythm quite yet. I think it will happen between now and the end of the season, We're hearing obviously Engels is out until the end of March. You and Boy Martin came in to tell us that. And we know that Alistair Johnston's out until the end of March as well. Not quite sure how we're going to deal with him and Araujo and who plays where, because you want to start with all your best quality players, and those two are two quality players. But you've got that, and then you've got people getting into their stride who have just joined the football club. And I do think that there's a moment, and it might be the right moment of the season, where we start getting into our stride and into our rhythm. Whereas the other teams might then start to find things difficult. So a slightly different hue on it there. However, the other thing I was going to mention is I do share your fears about going to Rugby Park. I mean, I know there was a game where we clinched the title last season. Adam Ida played one of his best games of football for Celtic. It was last season, right? And 2 seasons ago. Wow. Yeah. I'm getting old. Right. And, that was a comfortable evening at Rugby Park. There was another one under Ange Postecoglou where we absolutely trounced them in the first 30 minutes of the game and missed a penalty. Kyogo could even afford to laugh at himself for missing it. And we absolutely destroyed them. But that's few and far between. But the point remains, Chris, Sean says there, I'd feel more confident at home. Big part of that's obviously the surface and the park and the playing surface, etc. However, another big part of that is the home advantage, the home crowd. And that's something that we're not tapping into. That's a margin that we are refusing to fully maximise. To this point here, on this Sunday afternoon, we still haven't come any closer to a resolution there.
Yeah, I think you've described it in absolutely the right way over the last few shows, which is self-harming, and it's detrimental. There's no other way of describing it. There's no positives that are coming from it. The fact that we don't have the entire unified home support to rely on. The guys who go to the games both home and away, they do their bit absolutely, and they're so valuable. But why, when you know the impact that a fully stocked Celtic Park can have with the atmosphere and the tifos and the banners and the singing and the cohesion, it's one of your weapons that none of the other clubs can really claim to have. And we've relied on it so much, and former players have mentioned the effect it can have and how it can lift the team and lift the performance. It is a little bit, to use a cliche, the 12th man. A lot of people describe it as that. Opposition players talk about how big an effect it can have when you have to play in that environment, in that atmosphere. And for us not to find a way to bring that back into our arsenal, I think is really short-sighted. I think it is. I think you have to put ego aside. As I've always said, I think there's issues on both sides. I think you need a coming together, but the club are the ones with the power to resolve the situation. They are the ones that can take the steps. They are the ones that can make the move to resolve the situation. And each passing day that they don't do that, I think they invite more criticism their way. I'm not saying that they have to concede everything and they have to, give carte blanche to the whole Green Brigade or other groups that are involved in this. But start the engagement, start the process of talking, start the process of, having meaningful conversations about how we can work together going forward. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating because it could just give us that extra leverage as we go into this title run, and not having it is extremely frustrating.
It's a simple thing for me, Chris. Does it affect negatively not having the fans in the stadium? The answer to that is undoubtedly yes. Yeah. Therefore, find a solution. And that's what it comes down to. So all the pussyfooting around and all the egos or whatever is the issue, and I spoke about it on Friday. Get over it. What's best for Celtic? That's always the bottom line. 100%. What's best for the football club? Right, yeah. Okay, we know it is. We know it's best for the club. Get them back in. Sort it out. This is what I love. This is online in a nutshell, right? This is brilliant. Quinny comes in, positive, giving us the big, there you go, let's get into them, right? And then I know Jungle Lion's doing this tongue-in-cheek, but he says block Quinny. And on the other side of the scale, we've got the mighty Quinn. See, that's just the internet in a nutshell, right? And 3 messages. That is the internet. I love it.
Just don't bring up any comments from Tommy Gunn, because I'm not sure I could handle it.
I've not seen Tommy's yet, but what I will do is I'll bring up Orange Whip, who says, have Acsom got their own hairspray? Is that what it is? Nobody uses hairspray, Orange Whip. God, come on now. Nobody uses that stuff. I'll buy it. Still a few left. Hairspray is no good for your hair. Mr. Ewan comes in to say Engels out until the end of the match. That's a blow. That is an absolute blow. And I'll tell you something else. It also brings to mind the fact that we do have a situation where there are a number of players we've potentially criticised Hatate today. He might be in that zone, Chris. He might be in that zone that Maeda's in. And hopefully Engels doesn't go into, and that's the zone of having your head turned by a bid or interest from other clubs. Now, it does exist. Matt O'Reilly spoke about it. Remember, he had interest from Atalanta in January, went off the boil a bit, picked up again near the end of the season, spoke about it near the end of that campaign, then he finally gets his move to Brighton. It happens. They're only human. Sean, I mean, we have been critical of Rio, but we've got to take into account it may be something to do with that. We all accept it. He came to the end of his cycle probably in the summer there, if not before.
Yep, and we've not been so good at pulling the trigger on some of these guys when it's their time to go. Maeda, we've lost out on a lot of money holding on to him too long. Various other ones, down the years, and Cham, etc. So I think, it was definitely Hatate's time. Like he was still performing in August when the shop window was still open, and he's not really done so much since that closed. So yeah, and with no one lined up, let's just put it that way. Like there's so far, and with no replacements coming in, all we've got is players on loan. And the board would like to pat themselves on the back for having a couple of options to buy in there. Good job, guys. You signed 5 loan players and 1 free agent, and who was, I guess, he was available in August, and they signed him in February. So, you're giving yourself too much backpacking for that one as well. It depresses me to think about and talk about that. When you shared those interim reports, the comments on it, I was like, I had to go look it up on the Celtic website because I was like, this cannot be real. This is a parody.
It's satirical, really. Yeah.
Like they're opening their interim reports in February by talking about Brendan Rodgers and making sure that they blame Brendan Rodgers straight off the bat. I'm like, oh my goodness. They're actually, even stuff like saying 1 less football match when it should be 1 fewer. It's just amateur. Like,
they can't survive this season. They really can't. We've spoken about the amount of millions they talk about Europe, and obviously I've already pointed out the 2 biggest income streams are European football and the fan base. You look after those 2 things, your spreadsheet will look fine. And they've not looked after either of the 2. They haven't got us prepared for the Champions League, and they've not been looking after the fans. Therefore, there's been campaigns not to go to games, not to buy merchandise, and it's scalped them this season. They cannot survive. There needs to be a new regime. Hopefully that's already in place. Right, I'm going to get a couple of predictions from you guys. I'm going to give you mine first. I'm going to break tradition. Rio Hatate to open the scoring, get the man of the match, and Celtic to win 3-0. Chris, what about you?
Well, I tell you what, I take that. But I think it'll be not as tight as it's been. I think we're due to have a little bit more of a score line that reflects the way we play. So I'm hoping we get a good performance first and foremost, but I'm going to go again for you. I'll say a 3-1.
3-1, says Chris. Sean, I'm going to jump over to you. How are you feeling now? I've got to say, Chris, you got Sean, sorry guys. You did get it right when we were talking about the outcome at Dundee, 2-1. You predicted that, didn't you?
Yeah, and I think it'll be 2-1 again today. I disagree with Chris in the sense that I think our scores or results have been reflective of our performances lately. So I think we have been getting what we deserve. Well, to an extent anyway. Like some games we've won that we haven't quite deserved, but we've not really deserved to run up a score on anyone in a long time.
Big shout out to everybody on the Instagram, incidentally, because StreamYard doesn't bring your comments up, unfortunately, so I need to jump in separately. So some great and familiar names in there. Big shout out to Darren Connell. Hope you're well, sir, and hopefully we can get a catch up soon. And also last night I was in Bells Hill. What was I doing in Bells Hill? That hotbed of musical talent, Bells Hill. I was there for my friend's Ruby anniversary. Spoke to everybody in the room. I think was a Celtic fan. That was phenomenal. So a big shout out to everybody that I spoke to. Even the chap who had gone to the rugby in Edinburgh and had accidentally walked into a private function, realised it was a private function, ordered himself a pint, and just started mingling. Fair play to you, big man. Acsom fan, listens to Acsom. So, no, it was great to meet everybody. Big shout out to Paul Heron as well. So, great, always great to be in amongst the Celtic supporters. Go away and enjoy that first half. Join us at half time, and hopefully all three of us get a prediction of a victory right. But join us at half time on a Celtic State of Mind.
Morning.